Sophia and Henry had been friends since childhood. They grew up together, went to the same schools, and even went to the same college. They were inseparable, but that all changed when Sophia inherited a doll from her grandmother. The doll was old, made of porcelain, and had a creepy smile that seemed to follow you wherever you went. Sophia had always been fascinated by the doll and had spent hours playing with it as a child. But as she got older, she began to notice something strange about the doll. It would move on its own, its eyes would follow her around the room, and she even heard it whispering her name at night. At first, Sophia thought she was just imagining things, but then strange things started happening in her house. Objects would move on their own, doors would open and close by themselves, and she would hear strange noises coming from the attic. She tried to ignore it, but the doll seemed to be getting more and more aggressive with each passing day. One night, Sophia woke up to find the doll sitting at the foot of her bed, its eyes staring right at her. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The doll began to move closer and closer, its arms outstretched as if it was going to strangle her. Sophia closed her eyes and prayed for it to go away, but when she opened them again, the doll was gone. Sophia tried to tell Henry about what had happened, but he didn't believe her. He thought she was just having nightmares and that the doll was nothing more than a harmless toy. But as the days passed, Sophia's fears became more and more real. One evening, while Henry was visiting Sophia, they heard strange noises coming from the attic. Henry went to investigate, but when he came back down, he was pale and shaking. He told Sophia that he had seen the doll moving on its own, its eyes glowing in the darkness. Sophia knew that they had to do something before it was too late. They decided to call a paranormal investigator to come and check out the house. The investigator arrived the next day and began to investigate the strange occurrences. He set up cameras around the house and even brought in a psychic to help him communicate with the spirit of the doll. As they sat in the living room, the psychic suddenly went into a trance. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and she began to speak in a voice that was not her own. She said that the doll was possessed by the spirit of a young girl who had died in the house many years ago. The girl had been mistreated by her family and had died alone in the attic, where her body was left to rot for days. The psychic said that the girl's spirit had attached itself to the doll and was now seeking revenge on anyone who entered the house. She warned Sophia and Henry to leave the house immediately and never return. But Sophia couldn't bear the thought of leaving her childhood home. After deliberating her decision, she ultimately chose to stay while Henry returned home to attend to his other matters. Several nights later, Sophia started to notice something strange about the doll. She had woken up in the middle of the night, feeling as though something was watching her. As she turned over, she caught a glimpse of the doll on the shelf. Its eyes seemed to be fixed on her. Sophia immediately removed the doll from her room. She placed it in a closet and made a vow never to let it near her again. But as she tried to sleep that night, she could hear a faint scratching coming from the closet. It was as though the doll was trying to escape. Over the next few nights, Sophia was plagued with horrific nightmares. In them, she saw the doll come to life and crawl into her bed. Its porcelain skin was now slick with blood, and it held a wicked grin on its face. Sophia woke up each night, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that the doll was somehow haunting her, and she had no idea how to make it stop. Several days later, Henry returned to Sophia with a plan to destroy the doll once and for all. They devised a plan to lure the doll into the attic and trap it in a secure chest, hoping to contain it and burn it to finally put an end to the strange occurrences. The plan seemed foolproof, but things didn't go as planned. As they made their way up to the attic, they heard the sound of the doll's laughter echoing through the house. Sophia and Henry knew that they were in trouble, but it was too late to turn back now. They found the doll sitting on a small table in the middle of the room. Its eyes were glowing, and it seemed to be watching their every move. Sophia and Henry tried to pick it up, but as soon as they touched the doll, it came to life, its arms flailing wildly as it attacked them. Sophia and Henry tried to defend themselves, but the doll was too powerful. It seemed to be possessed by an evil force that was beyond their understanding. They managed to knock it to the ground, but it kept getting back up, its eyes glowing brighter and brighter with each passing second. As they struggled to subdue the doll, they heard the sound of the door slamming shut behind them. They were trapped in the attic with the possessed doll, and there was no way out. Sophia and Henry were both terrified, but they knew that they had to keep fighting if they wanted to survive. They tried to smash the doll against the wall, but it was too strong. They tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch fire. As they fought for their lives, they could feel the evil presence of the doll growing stronger. They could hear its voice in their minds, taunting them and promising them a slow and painful death. Suddenly, the doll lunged at Sophia, its porcelain arms outstretched. She tried to dodge out of the way, but it was too fast. The doll's arms closed around her throat, and she felt herself being lifted off the ground. Henry tried to pry the doll's fingers away, but they were like iron. He could see the life being choked out of Sophia, and he knew that he had to act fast. In a final burst of energy, Henry grabbed the doll and threw it against the wall, then found a sledgehammer in the attic near the tools cabinet and smashed the doll into a million pieces, and Henry could feel the evil presence dissipating into the air. He rushed to Sophia's side, but it was too late. She was already dead, her body lying limp on the floor. Henry wept uncontrollably, knowing that he had failed to save his friend. After Sophia's death, the police were called to investigate the strange circumstances surrounding her demise. At first, they thought that it might have been a case of homicide, but as they delved deeper into the investigation, they began to realize that something far more sinister was at play. In the days that followed, Henry was plagued by nightmares of the possessed doll. He could hear its voice in his head, taunting him and promising him a fate worse than death. One night, as he was lying in bed, he felt a cold breeze blowing through the room. He looked up and saw the silhouette of the doll standing at the foot of his bed. Its eyes were glowing with an otherworldly light, and Henry could feel its evil presence creeping closer and closer. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. He tried to run, but his body wouldn't move. He was paralyzed with fear, staring into the soulless eyes of the doll as it began to laugh. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the doll vanished into thin air. Henry was left alone in the darkness, shivering with fear and wondering if he would ever be free from the horror that had haunted him for so long.